Thanks for joining us online today. If you've been impacted by this ministry and have a story to share of how God is working in your life, we would love to hear it. Send an email to amen@anchorpoint.tv. Also, you can help bring messages just like this one to others who need to hear the hope and love of Jesus by investing today at anchorpoint.tv/give. Now, we hope you enjoy today's message.
If you got your message guide when you came in, go ahead and pull that out. If you got your Bibles, Luke chapter 13, where we'll be at today. Pull up a chair, week number 3. And kind of the idea behind this series has been that I wanted to talk about 4 different topics that really had nothing to do with each other, but that I thought was important for us to cover as a church. In fact, week number 1, we talked about not settling, that God requires a certain level of commitment and all-inness, and we didn't want to settle for less than God's best. And then didn't Pastor Ryan do a good job last week? Come on. Yeah. And I talked about the power of same. And the reality is this series has kind of morphed into a growth series, a series on spiritual growth. And we have a strategy around here where 4 things that we want every person to do when they come here. We gather, and that's on Sunday morning. So we gather, we connect in small groups, we grow, and we serve. So we've really been focusing on this topic of growth. In fact, the title for today's message is Growth Goals. Growth Goals. How many of you ever started a new year and you set some goals? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Yeah. How many of you by this time of the year you're already thinking about your new goals because you didn't make them for this? Yeah. We're already getting ready. Growth goals. And if you're on social media, there's this hashtag that you can follow called hashtag goals. And there's all these goals in that. And a hashtag just kind of groups content together. And there's vacation goals, and there's relationship goals, and there's life goals, and there's all these different types of goals, but all the goals kind of revolve around 3 things. It's either a thing, a material possession, or it is a health issue or something you want to do physically, or it is a place. But rarely are there anything with growth goals. And for me, one of the things I'm always trying to do is I'm always trying to grow. I'm always trying to grow because I don't have everything figured out. In fact, if you come here long enough, you will find out that I don't have it figured out. And if you're searching for the church with the perfect pastor, you can continue your search because you have not found it in me. I'm always trying to grow as a leader. I'm always trying to grow as a pastor. I'm always trying to grow as a father. I'm always trying to grow as a husband. And one of the things I've learned over 9 years of pastoring our church is that there's no shortcuts to growth. There's no shortcuts to growth. In fact, how many of you, will play along if you don't raise your hand, rest of the message, have ever attempted something, whether it was a diet, a trip, a job, something at your house, a repair project? How many of you have ever attempted something and tried a shortcut? Would you raise your hand if you tried a shortcut? Yeah, my hand's up. Yeah, I tried a shortcut. You know what? Shortcuts just rarely work. In fact, I want to go way old school. When I was in high school, there was these things called Cliff Notes. Who knows what Cliff Notes are? Who knows? Okay. I don't know what they have now. I'm gotten old. Somebody had to tell me. I'm sure it's on the internet and you can buy your research projects and stuff like that. But back in the day, you didn't want to read the book in English class. You would go and you would buy Cliff Notes, and you would write your book report or your research report based on the Cliff Notes of the things. So we would do that, and we would get these grades. And but in middle school, we had a thing, and some of y'all won't know what this is, but we had the Book It program. The Book It program, where you would read 5 books, you write 5 book reports, and you would get free pizza from Pizza Hut. Who remembers what I'm talking about? A few of you. Okay. So we had the Book It program, and I had read 4 books. I read 4 books, and I needed my 5th book. The problem is they had to be turned in on Friday, and I was not going to have time to read a book. And one of the books you could read in middle school was Charlotte's Web. And a guy told me, he's like, hey, man, would you just go get the Cliff Notes? I'm like, man, it is Wednesday. It's got to be turned on. I don't know if I have time to read the Cliff Notes. He said, well, here's the deal. Just read the front of the cover in the first chapter, the back of the cover in the last chapter, put it in the middle of the 5, put it, 1, 2, middle, Charlotte's Web, other 2 in the middle of it. The teacher will just thumb through it to see that you did the work. You'll get the stamp and the Book It coupon, and you'll be able to get a pizza. It will be awesome. I thought this dude was genius. This is amazing stuff. You're going to grow up to be a criminal, but this is awesome, all right? So I did what he told me to do. And I'm sitting there, and we're in 6th grade, and we're sitting there, we turn our stuff in. She had us doing an assignment. She's up there. She's thumbing through the things, the book it program, and she's stumbling on, she's thumbing aside. And mine's in there, and I'm purposely, when the class turned them in, I got in the middle of the class so that she, by the third one, she would be uninterested to look through the book program. About halfway through our assignment, she says, Mr. Forrest, would you come here, please? I said, yes, ma'am. Yes, I would. She goes, did you read all 5 of these books? I said, yes, I did, because I read the front to the back. I read the front cover and the back cover of that book. I said, yes, I did. I read all. She said, who's Charlotte? And I said, excuse me? Who's Charlotte? Spider or pig? Mm-hmm. Now, I wasn't smart enough to think of the title Charlotte's Web. So I said pig. And she called my mother. And in my day, if you got in trouble at school, guess what? You got in trouble at home. And here's what I learned that day. Shortcuts offer success without sacrifice. That's what it does. The Thigh Master offered success with the Bowflex. Work out 5 minutes a day, eat cake, and look like this. It offers success. Can I tell you there is no success without sacrifice? That growth requires sacrifice, because growth is not a straight line. In fact, if you're jotting down notes, I want you to get it like this. Here's our key thought. Growth is progress, not perfection. And we are in a generation that if they cannot do something all the way, then they don't want to do it. But I'm here to tell you growth is progress. Growth is not about never failing. Growth is about always learning. Growth is progress. Everybody shout the word progress. 1, 2, 3, progress. It's about progress. It's not about being perfect at everything, because everybody in this room has areas in their life that they want to grow in, that they want to succeed in. But I would say that you probably have more than one area of your life that not that you want to grow in, but that you need to grow in, that is the most beneficial to your life. And oftentimes, the thing that hinders us from that area is we don't see progress fast enough. Come on and say amen. We get deterred when we don't see progress, because we live in the Insta generation. I went on Amazon and I searched products with the word Insta in it. 5,000 products with the word you can get an Insta pot, you can buy an Insta bed, you can get Insta mashed potatoes, you can post it on Instagram. I mean, we are in this consumer generation. If it has to be quick, and if it's not quick, it's not beneficial, or I don't have the stick-to-itiveness for my life. And here's what I've learned, though, that slow progress is better than no progress. That 3 steps forward and 2 steps back is still progress. And here's what I know. You can't grow everywhere. I get that. But you can grow somewhere. So the question for you that you have to wrestle to the ground is, what area of my life needs the most growth? Because the scriptures in Luke 13, Jesus tells us a parable about growth. Now, the scriptures uses a lot of agricultural analogies about trees and souls and fruit, and it makes a correlation to our spiritual lives. And here's the reality that growth physically in an agricultural setting has a spiritual application for our life. And next month, we're supposed to be in a series called Only Jesus. So I've been reading the Gospels, and I just can't get out of some of this stuff. So Luke 13, Jesus tells a parable about a fig tree. And the thing I love about parables is it has multiple interpretations. In fact, you could preach this one parable from 3 or 4 different. You could preach about the patience of God in this parable. You could preach about the contrast between the justice of God and the mercy of God in this parable. But I want to lean into the expectation of God. Because in this parable, God expects growth. And what I want to do is I want to read the whole parable and then unpack 3 takeaways for us. Here's what it says. Luke chapter 13, verse number 6 says this. Then he told this parable. A man had a fig tree planted in his vineyard. And when he went to look for fruit on it, but he did not find any. Verse number 7. So he said to the man who took care of the vineyard. So we have the owner and the gardener. He said to the man, the gardener who took care of the vineyard, for 3 years now, I have been coming to look for fruit on this fig tree and haven't found any. Cut it down. In your spiritual walk, growth is expected. I wonder what would happen if the gardener came by and inspected your life today. I wonder what he would find. Look what he says. Why should it use up the soil? See, God is not even interested in allowing unfruitfulness to take up space in your life that is valuable. Cut it down. Why should it take up the soil? Look at the gardener. Sir, the man replied, leave it alone for one more year. I'm so glad I serve a God of second chances and third chances and fourth chances that's patient with me, that's willing to give me time after time, that when you don't get it right, that he's still not mad at me. He's mad about me and provides a way for me to be made right with him. Come on and say amen. The gardener said, I'll dig around it and I'll fertilize it. What did he say? He said, I'm going to work on it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to throw it away. You're not a throwaway. You're not a mistake. He said, I'm going to work on this thing a little bit. And if it bears fruit next year, fine. If not, then we'll cut it down. 3 things. I'll pick up speed because I've used so much time on my introduction. The first one is this. Remember, you were planted on purpose. You were planted on purpose. You're not an accident. That in every season, in every situation of your life, you have purpose. You've been planted in your family on purpose. You have been planted in this church with a purpose. You've been planted on your job. Students, you've been planted in your school with a purpose. And one of the things I want to see is people find their purpose and do it for a long time. #same. Come on, somebody. Just keep doing it over and over again. Just keep serving your purpose. Keep serving God with how he's equipped, why he's equipped you. I want to see people do that for a long time. Pastor Chris Hodges said the 2 greatest days are the day you were born and the day you figure out why. You got to know your purpose. Why? Because if you don't know the purpose of a product, you will abuse the product. I remember being a young kid, and I had 2 older brothers, and they played baseball, and we had a big front yard, and we would go out and we would play baseball, and they were teaching me about an athletic cup and what an athletic cup was. And so we were playing one day, and it was in the bat bag, and a couple of my neighbors who were younger than me came out over, and they looked at this thing, and it was a triangle, and it had 3 holes, and my neighbor Patrick, he said, "What's that?" I said, "You don't know what that is?" He said, "No." I said, "That's an oxygen mask." Yes, I did. Yes, I did. He said, "Why would you do that for baseball?" Because it gets oxygen to the brain, helps you play better. So you should put it on your mouth and get a little. Inside the bag was an actual jock strap that you could hook across your ears to keep them. I said, "Look at this device that holds it." So I put it in the device. I said, "You strap that around your ears, and while you're in the back," y'all, when my mom comes to visit, y'all just need to say, you're the greatest woman I've ever met in my life. Because you think I'm bad now at 39. You should have seen me back. And they put it around, he's breathing it. And then my neighbor's mom looks out the window and sees her son with a so you can get the visual of this, breathing in, yeah. And she's like, "Get that off of your face!" Who told you to do that? Like Todd, And did I mention that if you got in trouble, and yeah. And so I got a whooping that made me pray for the return of Christ. Because when you don't know the use of something, you tend to abuse it. And in our parable, the man said this: a man had a fig tree that he planted in his vineyard. We got to learn to live with an awareness of purpose in our life, because every plant has a purpose. A tomato's plant's purpose is to produce tomatoes. It would be illogical to expect a plant to produce something that was never created for. It would be illogical. And frustration sets in when we try to be someone and something that we were never created to be. In fact, we can never fulfill our purpose wanting to be someone else. And tragically, too many people live for the expectations of people rather than the purposes of God. Trying to be what someone else wants them to be rather than who God has called them to be. In fact, I jotted a few things down about purpose like this. Purpose reduces frustration and increases motivation. Sometimes the reason we're very, very frustrated in our life is because we have not settled our God-given purpose in our life. Purpose keeps me from distraction and gives me direction. Purpose allows me to focus my energy appropriately on the assignment that God has given me. And the Bible says that you were created for works for which He had purposed in advance for you to do. That you are designed by the Creator of the world. That He formed you, He knit you together with your personality and your proclivities and your issues and your successes and your strength. And He had an assignment for you to do. And in this season, it is time to say, God, I want to live my life on purpose. I want to live my life with a purpose. I want to live my life for how you created, because here's what I found out, that if He began a good work in you, He will complete it. If you believe it, say amen. Jesus said this though, let me press on this. Growth produces proof. He said he went to it and he didn't find any fruit. Here's what he said. He said, from a distance the plant looked good, but the closer the owner got, the worse the tree looked. And that's the way some people are in their life. From a distance, people look good in their life. But how many of you know there are people in your life, the closer you get, the worse they look? Because, I mean, they look good from a distance, but the closer you got, you realize it was just a few Facebook posts that covered up their insecurities. Oh, is that too personal? Because, you know, we don't put our real selves out there. Oh, it looked like growth, but all it was a post that keeps you from seeing the hurt that I'm trying to hide. Oh, it looked good from the outside. It looked like growth, but what it really was busyness. A lot of activity, a lot of running around. It looked like growth. It looked like growth, but what it really was accumulation on a credit card bill or on a debt ratio. It looked like growth, but purpose is deeper than appearance. And we got to find that thing that gives us significant value. God-given purpose. Your purpose is not a passion. A passion can be a clue to your purpose, but just because you're passionate about it doesn't mean it's your purpose. He chose you with a purpose. You were planning on purpose. The second thing is this, if you're jotting down notes. You got to replace what is unnecessary to your growth. Replace what is unnecessary to your growth. Now, this requires personal responsibility. Personal responsibility is kind of not really popular in our culture. This requires someone to care. And some of us are tolerating things that are sabotaging our growth. And the only word I could come up for this was the word discipline. Discipline. Because you have to be disciplined to replace what is unnecessary to your growth. Now, discipline is not particularly happy and joyful. Like, I don't love discipline, but, you know, I go to the gym and I work out with several people in here. And a lot of times, I don't see happy people at the gym. They're not walking around, hey, how you doing? You know? No. If you're happy at the gym, you're not doing it right. Because I hate the gym. Don't you love working out? No, I love when working out is over. That's when I love it. It takes discipline to do that. Discipline. In fact, discipline is how you know you love something or someone. The indicator that I love my two sons is that I discipline them. Right. That I take a personal responsibility in their development. Because I don't discipline your children. Now, I may make commentary when I see them acting a fool out there in the lobby. I'm like, somebody needs a butt whooping. Yeah. But I will discipline your children if you want me to. I can show but I don't naturally. And it will take discipline to remove. This is uncomfortable. This requires self-evaluation. And so many times we don't do critical thinking on self. We project judgment on others. Oh, we can fix everybody else's life but our own. We might not have a church next week, Pastor Ryan. But I'm going to preach it anyway because we're trying to grow. We're trying to grow. Look what it said. Look what it said. The gardener said, "Sir," the man replied, "leave it alone for one more year, and I'll," say it with me, "I'll dig around it. I'll dig around it. I'll dig around it." We got to replace what is unnecessary for our growth. We got to replace some habits, some thought patterns, some attitude, because you can't grow if you don't dig. Let me say it like this. You can't grow higher if you don't allow God to dig deeper. The owner said, "cut it down." The gardener said, "let me work on it." The gardener saw potential that the owner did not see. Now, I got a little nerdy this week watching YouTube videos on planting trees. And you know that when you dig around a tree, it aerates the soil. It aerates. What does it do? It produces potential that wasn't there. And digging turns things upside down. Digging opens up the plant to new possibilities that were not there before. And here's what I figured out in our life. Sometimes God has to dig some things up in our life to replace them with things that need to be in our life. Some of us are trying to live new life still planted in old soil. You got to dig that thing up. You got to turn it up. You got to turn it upside down. The indication that your life is upside down is not an indication that God is not present. It may be an indication that God is working on you one more time. I looked at, here's another one. Digging allows you to replace unproductive soil with nutrient-rich soil. Digging exposes the root system, allowing the gardener to replace what anchors you. Because when you anchor yourself to the wrong things, you limit your growth. We get mad at God. I'm not growing. We get mad at the church. I'm not growing. The thing about the vineyard is there was a tree right beside this tree that was growing just fine. So somebody else is growing in the same situation and season that you are. So he said, let me dig around. And we get mad at people. When in reality, we have attached ourselves to people and places that do not promote our growth. And no environments are neutral. Some environments bring the best out of you. Some bring the worst out of you. Come on and say amen. The DMV. Yeah, that's right. Anything dealing with the tag office. If you work at the tag office, I love you. But Lord, they need a better system at the tag office. It brings the worst out of me. Now, some places bring the best. Digging. Here's how I wrote down. Place yourself in environments that promote growth as much as possible. In fact, I began to watch these videos, and I was like, there's things that always limit growth of plants and trees. And like one of them was weeds. I'm like, man, I can't believe that would limit. Yeah, because weeds are a sign of neglect. Sometimes the reason we're not growing spiritually is because we've neglected our spiritual life. How much effort does it take to grow weeds at your house? None. Nothing. It is a sign of neglect. And what weeds do, weeds crowd the plant. Another one, I know what hinders growth? Insects. Because insects infect. And they damage the tree and bring disease. Now don't look at nobody in this room. But they some insects. But the one I really focused on were these things called suckers. How many of you know what a sucker is? You know, okay, y'all got a green thumb, all right? You know what a sucker is. If you go home and you look at your tree or you look at some shrubbery, you'll see at the bottom there's these sprouts that come out. There's these sprouts that come out from the bottom of it. And I got a tree in my yard. And I was like, man, what are all those sprouts? So I began to research it. And a sucker is a competing branch that hinders a productive branch. Now, here's the unique thing about a sucker. The tree or the plant produces a sucker when it's under stress. So what, this is, oh man, my head about exploded. When the tree is under stress, it will produce something that it thinks is helping it, but is actually hurting it. So the tree gets under stress, this sucker shoots up from the bottom of it in an effort of what the tree thinks is saving its life, but what it has no idea doing is that sucker, because it's at the bottom, is sucking all the water and the nutrients from the life of the tree. So when it was under stress, it did something to try to cover its stress, but put it under more stress. Look at the person beside you and say, cut that sucker off. Cut that sucker off. I'm going to set some single people free today. Cut that sucker off. Some of you need to call somebody in your family that's dating somebody. You need to listen to this man because you need to cut that sucker off. Some of you need to cut that sucker. Just sucking the life out of you. Man, living through a lens, living through a window that is sucking the life out of you. Man, turning on a social media apparatus that after 5 minutes you get so frustrated. Look at them, look at her, look at him. I can't believe they're doing this. So cut that sucker off. Turn to the person beside you and say, cut that sucker off. Man, you need something that is sucking the life. Cut it off. Some of you got some lies that are sucking the life out of you. Some of you got some fear that is sucking the life out of you. Some of us have got some guilt in our past and some regret. It is sucking the life out of you. And what we're doing, we think we're covering ourselves, but it is really taking all of your energy and all of your strength, and you got to cut that sucker off. Cut it off, cut it off, cut it off, cut it off. I know it looks good on the outside. I know it looks like you got things together on the outside. I know nobody would know if they didn't get behind you and beside you and get close to you that you don't have it all figured out, but you got to cut the sucker off. Well, cut it off. People might know something's wrong. I would rather cut it off than be healthy than hide it and be sick. Cut that sucker off. I love a God that's patient enough to dig around me again. I love a God that's patient enough to dig around my heart again. When I rejected him, he dug again. I love a God that's good enough to dig out the hurt in my life, that's dig out the guilt in my life. I want to be a church that says, here I am, God. Dig inside of me. God, do a deal. I don't want a church that looks like we got superficial success. I want a church that God gets beneath the surface and begins to work on the deep places, on the dark places, on the areas we say, God, no, you can't come here. God says, that's right there is where I want. I want to do a work beyond the outside. I want to do a work on a soul level. And until we ask God, God, would you do a work in me? We're going to be stuck at our current level of growth because it requires digging. It requires getting your hands dirty. It requires a little uncomfort to dig. Let God dig in you. And I remember a season in my life when God was digging and it hurt. But what it produced was better than what I left. The last one is this, number 3. You got to redefine what growth looks like. You got to redefine what growth looks like. Growth don't always look like what we think it should. And when you are in your life and you don't think it looks like what you thought it would look like, don't lose hope. Because growth looks like work. Growth is a 4-letter word, W-O-R-K. Growth looks like learning. Growth looks like staying faithful when you feel like quitting. And you got to redefine growth. Redefine growth. Because growth requires pruning, digging, and fertilizing. Look what the gardener said. Look what the gardener said. Sir, the man replied, leave that tree alone because I'm still working on it. Some of us are a work in progress. Growth is progress. Don't let somebody look down on you because you ain't where you want to be. Praise God, you're not where you used to be. You're in progress. You're in progress. Leave it alone for 1 more year. I'll dig around it, and I'll, say it with me, fertilize it. If you're going to prune something, that requires the shears. If you're going to dig around something, that requires the shovel. If you're going to fertilize something, y'all know I love alliteration, right? The shears, the shovel, and the... What y'all laughing at? I'm thinking about compost. I don't know what y'all are thinking about, dirty people. The shears, the shovel, and the poo. It's amazing. A plant can pull power out of poo. Isn't that amazing? Look at the person beside you and say, poo happens. Go ahead. It's all right to have fun in church. Y'all calm down. Sometimes life can be a poo show. You ever been up Poo Creek without a paddle? I'm sorry, Pastor Jess. Pastor Jess keeps me straight. And some of us don't know how to respond when poo happens. In fact, we're in a Bible study. I'm leading a small group this semester called Understanding the Bible. And we were talking about translations the other week and how translations, different words, whatever. And so this is the NIV, and it uses fertilizes. The King James Version, if you got a King James Version, it says dung. He said, let me dig it and let me dung it. Let me dig it and let me dung it. And some of us, when life throws dung on us, Well, we throw it back. We're mad. And we're upset. It didn't work out how we wanted to. But may I present to you an alternate scenario. That when life happens to you, when poo happens to you, that when you throw it back on the people that hurt you, and you throw it back on the people that did something, and you throw it back on the office that fired you, and you throw it back on the person, when you throw it back, can I tell you something? You may be wasting your fertilizer. You may be wasting it. Because it was never meant to destroy you. God said, I'll use it to develop you. Your enemy didn't mean it for that. The person that wounded you didn't mean it for that. But I read in Genesis about Joseph, and Joseph was sold into slavery, and he spent 17 years in pits and prisons. And one day his brothers showed up, and they said, we're sorry. He said, don't say you're sorry. You meant it for evil. God meant it for good. God was using it to grow me and develop me in my life. God sent me here to protect. Maybe it's not what it looks like. Maybe it's not what it feels like. I know it don't feel good. I know it don't look good. But maybe, just maybe, it is growing you. Maybe, just maybe, it is developing you. Maybe, just maybe, God is using the thing that you don't want to be in your life to grow who He needs you to be in your life. God meant it for good. God meant it for good. I can't control what happens to me. But I control my outlook. I can control my outlook. I was listening to a preacher this week, and he told a story about growing up over in the Panhandle of Florida. And there's a lot of farms out there, if you're in a very rural area in Panhandle. One day he went for a house visit to a chicken farmer, and they were piling up all the chicken poo because they sell it for compost. And they were out walking around the pasture. It was a hot summer day. Just the wind was blowing just right, and it just hit him. If you've ever been around a farm, you know what I'm talking about. And he's like, oh, brother, I don't know how you do it. He's like, how I do what? The farmer grabbed his overalls, took a big old deep breath. Says, smells like money to me. Maybe it's how you look at it. Maybe what you see determines how you call it. Maybe the next time you feel like life has fertilized you, maybe you take a big old, smells like growth to me. Smells like success to me. I ain't got here yet, y'all. But I want to get to the place in my life where I celebrate when the fertilizer comes. I do. I mean, if you want to mess with somebody, you want to mess with the people that you think are your haters, you want to mess with the people you think don't like you, you want to mess with the people in your job that you are convinced is trying to make your life miserable, the next time they do something to you, say thank you. Thank you. You just made me better. Come on. Thank you. You just made me stronger. Thank you. You just made my faith grow. God, I want to say thank you. Every time it doesn't look like what I thought, every time it doesn't feel like what I thought, God, I thank you that you're growing me beneath the surface. I thank you that even when life stinks and even when life is smelly, God, you are doing something that I cannot see. So God, I thank you for everything that you're bringing into my life. I thank you. I thank you. I'm running out of time, but I want to give you this last thing. Here's what I figured out. Adversity grows capacity. Adversity grows capacity. It's tears lead to triumph. Crosses lead to crowns. Valleys lead to victories. Adversity grows capacity. And I want to pray over every person that feels like you're going through it.